Got this thing going.
Content
what is that?
capture.
What is that cocktail?
Capture.
It's a strong hot toddy.
Damn.
I got the lemon wheel with the cloves on it and everything. I did it just the way
Yeah, it looks
liquor.com told me to.
You trying to fight a cold?
Yeah, I'm on the ass end of a cold, so hopefully I should be okay by Saturday. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm feeling pretty good today.
Well, you look like shit.
Well, I mean, you're going to say, oh, you always look like shit.
No, sometimes you look halfway presentable.
A podcast about bourbon and the ones who drink it. This is Bourbon Matters. Welcome to Bourbon Matters. I'm Jake.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Gold Eagle Jake.
And tonight we're exploring an interesting topic that Dan came across near the end of 2023. Dan, do you want to jump into the article?
I feel we can jump into that, but I think first the more important thing is now that we're into 2024, it's important to take a little bit of time and discuss 2023 and things that happened, such as Gold Eagle Jake making a bet with me that the Bears would finish better than the Packers in the NFC North, and we know now that definitely didn't happen, and Jake owes me a bottle of whiskey, which I cannot wait to get at the tasting event.
I think I got a nice bottle of apple pie moonshine for you.
We said whiskey.
It is whiskey.
That is whiskey.
That's moonshine.
That's whiskey.
Apple pie has sugar in it. It's got additives in it.
You never specified straight.
It had to be over $50 as well.
Oh,
and it had to be something
true.
from your collection, I believe.
Don't worry, I will find something for you. I don't know
find a nice
where
MGP
all these additional stipulations came from, but
well, I think they were discussed when we laid this all out. And
you can go back to that episode and listen to it and fill me in.
Just be glad that the Bears are awful, because if somehow you would have won, I had a nice bottle of E.H. Taylor ready for you to go. I was not going to put it in the tube, though, because I know you don't like the tube.
Yeah, if you would have gave me E.H. Taylor, I would have given it away.
But yeah, so towards the end of 2023, for work, I was in and out of a bunch of liquor stores. And just was kind of noticing that there was some things on shelves that I was seeing that I didn't expect to see on some of the shelves. And was wondering why. And then about a month ago, when Brown Foreman posted their fiscal quarter 2 results for the 2023-2024 year, the headline was that whiskey sales were declining. So I wanted to look into that, and then I'll go over some of the main points of this. And I, by no means, I don't think anyone's going to be saying that the whiskey bubble has popped. I think that's nowhere near anything we're talking about. But has whiskey peaked in the U.S.? And from the article, when you go through and look at all the information in the article they released, the Brown Foreman stuff, I'll be talking. We're not advisors on stocks or anything like that, but the numbers I put together are based off of their organic growth. So this doesn't include acquisitions or mergers throughout the year. This is just their normal brand products heading into the start of the fiscal season. So overall for Brown Foreman, their sales were up 2% in the first quarter of the fiscal year and 1% in the second quarter of the fiscal year. However, during that same time period, sales of Jack Daniel's products fell by 1%. And when you look back at the same time frame from last year, Jack Daniel's was up 9% over the previous year. So the previous year went up 9%. This year it dropped 1%. And that's also despite having a 52% growth in sales of Jack Daniel's Apple.
Huh, interesting.
So Jack Daniel's Apple was way up, but they still fell by 1%. Overall, for whiskey in the Brown Foreman portfolio, it fell by 2%. Jack Daniels was at 1%, Woodford fell 3%, and Old Forester fell at 5%. Despite last year, their premium brands being up 39% in sales over the previous fiscal year during the same time frame. Because of that, they've dropped their sales projected sales growth this year by about 2%. So they were expecting about 5 to 7% organic growth this year. They've cut it to 3 to 5%. Brown Foreman's board, the reasons they came out with, they had 3 reasons of why they thought this was happening. Those 3 reasons were cost-conscious consumers, saying that as inflation continues to rise, consumers are becoming more budget-conscious and are opting for cheaper alternatives to premium brands. Increased competition, saying that the whiskey market has become increasingly competitive in recent years with new brands entering the market and putting more pressure on established players. And shifting consumer preferences, consumers are increasingly interested in trying new and unique products, which may drive them away from traditional brands like Jack Daniels. Now, again, this is only Brown Foreman. There is certainly a way to say that sales outside of Brown Foreman could be way up with all the new types of whiskey you see on the shelves these days. But it's still a little bit, just to start to think and ponder is, are we at the peak of whiskey? Or are we, if not at the peak, or do we think we're really near the peak of whiskey sales in the U.S.?
Mm-hmm. Well, wasn't it, I want to say it was two years ago that tequila overtook whiskey as the number one selling spirit
last year
in America.
I'm pretty sure it was 2022 where it was the first year that tequila passed whiskey in the U.S.
And in Brown, I was reading, I got to find which brand it was. I was reading in the Brown Foreman article that overall their tequila was down 1% as well, despite one of their brands being up 9%. I'll have to remember to find out what the brand that was again, but
yeah, I mean, all 3 reasons that you listed from the report, I think, are all valid. I think inflation's definitely making it difficult to justify buying whiskey that, a year ago was like $5, $10, or even more dollars cheaper. We've seen a lot of brands increase bottle prices by like almost $50 in some cases, especially for like limited releases. And I think that's not just due to inflation. I think a lot of it's just due to demand and trying to squeeze a little bit of extra cash out of consumers. But
well, costs are rising too. Barrels
right,
have gone up,
across the
gone
board.
up.
Yeah. So
yeah,
I got one more reason that is definitely throwing all this off. COVID.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we saw the number, liquor sales spiked through the roof when COVID was happening. People were thinking the world's going to end. Everybody was drinking every day. People were stocking their houses because they thought they weren't going to be able to leave for a couple of weeks. And then as soon as COVID ended, people started going crazy, going out to bars, partying, traveling. And then now that is all kind of just like mellowing out. And I think it's impressive that we're still, there hasn't really been a huge decline. I was just trying to look up and do some research on total alcohol sales, and it seems like there's some say we're up a couple percentages, some say we're down a couple percentages. I think it would take a lot more time to dive into and figure out exactly where we're at. But I think COVID spiked up, and then we're kind of just seeing the lull, getting back to normal. But I think we're probably ahead of where we were before COVID.
Yeah, and that's the thing is it's been up since COVID. When I looked at a lot of the stuff, it was very similar to that of a growth or pretty much stagnant on growth in terms of overall alcohol sales from the previous year to now. The one change, what they more see as a change of what people are buying within those sales. And the biggest category with growth right now is ready to drink beverages.
Yeah,
which
that was
huge. Easier things for people to grow in and grab and go home and have a good cocktail. And that's that's where we're seeing a lot of the switch in sales go to is from some of the more hard liquors and beers to the RTD, ready to drink stuff. So
Yeah, I mean, I think that tracks with what Jake was saying, where during COVID, nobody had anything better to do than make their own cocktails at home. Now that life is back to normal, nobody wants to take that time anymore. So the canned beverages are simple, easy. You don't have to think about anything. You just grab one and drink it. So yeah, that makes sense to me. I think.
I mean, especially for like parties and boating and stuff like that, it's just people are kind of switching from. At least I'm seeing some people switch from beer to like RTDs and more liquor.
Well, and the beer thing is real because I mean, just some of the small brew pubs down here. There's been 2 or 3 brew pubs within the last 6 months here that brewed their own beer and had their little bar and everything have gone out of business. And I think we're seeing a more and more shift of some of the smaller microbrews from the big craft beer bubble from a while ago start to fall off.
Yeah. What was it Anchor Brewing that went under earlier in the year? There's like some big like flagship.
Yeah, I mean Anchor
craft.
closed their doors, but they're owned by Asahi or Sapporo, like one of the big Japanese companies, and I think they just decided, you know what, just to scrap Anchor because it's not really making us any money, and we're gonna, focus on our big money movers and bigger name brands that are global.
Yeah, I mean it's indicative overall of the move away from, I think, craft beer and like those like heavier beer products, and like pair that with there's a growing trend in like fitness and stuff like that, and beer is not really compatible with that kind of lifestyle.
Well, that, and I think a lot of people have just, every once in a while when you do your own homebrew stuff, you come up with something good and people are like, you should make a microbrew, and then they make a microbrew and everyone's like, oh, well, your stuff's kind of just meh. And then they go out elsewhere. But no, it's like when I started thinking about this, and it's kind of funny that it's also a Brown Foreman product, but one of the things I saw on shelves in a few stores, not even behind glass or anything, was the Woodford Masters Triple Sonoma that came out this year. And last year, anything Woodford Masters would be gone in a heartbeat and not sitting on shelves, and it was out. I've seen stuff on sale prices that you wouldn't think you would ever see on sale, which obviously means it's not moving. So that's just kind of some of the red flags that I got raised when I was looking around, and then shortly after this article came out, and it made me wonder, are we at the peak in terms, I'm not saying that it's going to fall off a cliff, but are we going to plateau or not see much of an increase in sales overall from bourbon or whiskey?
Dan, the shelves that you see are different than normal shelves.
We're at a fairly large liquor store.
Yeah, I don't know. I have a very hard time believing that we're at the peak. I think, especially because the Brown Foreman, the big name brands, they're not. You said what, they're down just like a couple percentage points.
Yeah, so overall 2%. The biggest ones in their portfolio, Woodford was down 3 and Old Forester was down 5, which isn't a ton, but when you take a small percentage of a big number, it still ends up to be a fairly large number.
Right. I think that's not a lot for how many new distilleries and whiskey brands there are out there.
Yeah,
There's 100 times, if not like 500 times more options for people to choose than there was 10 years ago.
Yeah, and again, this was just from Brown Foreman. This isn't saying everything. This is just out of their public reportings that they put out. And they mentioned that there's a lot of other options out there. But I mean, if, let's say, I think 2.1 or 2.2 billion in sales last year. So even if whiskey is a third of that and it's down 1%, I mean, you're still talking tens of millions of dollars that you need a lot of crafts to come in and make up in that sales. And then if we're continuing to grow, they got to make even more than that, what Woodford lost. You're talking, if you're looking at all the big brands too, you're talking hundreds of millions of dollars that some of these smaller, newer players are having to make up in sales.
Yeah, I think
I don't know. I think
No, go ahead, Jake.
go ahead. No, I was just gonna say I think we're still near the beginning. I think there's still a ton of people that are brand new that are just getting into whiskey. And if you look back in the 90s, people, the majority of people didn't drink whiskey. People drank vodka, and people thought that they didn't like whiskey. Whiskey's come a long way, and also people have just kind of become more open to it, and it's for sure an acquired taste. Like, we know that, like, nobody likes whiskey neat on their first try. It takes some time to kind of get into it and adapt to it, and I think we're seeing a lot of people new to the category, just kind of dipping their toes. And there's people that have been in it for a while, like us, and there's people that have been in it, further back than us, that probably have massive collections. I'm hearing it from customers all the time saying, I have so much whiskey in my house that I couldn't drink it all if I tried to, and, would end up killing myself if I did. And then there's, so I think we're just kind of, it's kind of like the top of the pyramid. We're kind of dripping down, and we're just, more and more people are going to get into the category. And like I said, it's an acquired thing. It's not something you just start to like immediately. So I think we're just kind of breaking the ice into it becoming even bigger. I mean, we don't see ads for bourbon. We don't really see ads for whiskey. Kentucky's come a long way, making it like a destination point. People are starting to take vacations to Kentucky to just go and visit distilleries. So I think there's still a lot more for growth.
On that marketing side of things, I'm trying to find where I saw it. It's in this massive article, but Woodford had raised their marketing costs up 5% for this fiscal year, and we're halfway through that. It's just one thing. So they are spending more on marketing on it, and
they should be spending more. I mean, because it kind of is like a word of mouth. I mean, everyone I know that's getting into whiskey says, "Oh, I went to my friend's house, and they showed me some different. They had like 100 bottles of whiskey, and I was blown away. Like, didn't even know there were this many whiskeys out there, and now they're intrigued by it, and they're starting to come to tastings, and So I think it's a lot of word of mouth. We have we don't really see ads for whiskey, and I think all that is definitely about to start coming.
Yeah, so much of it is based on recommendations from people that or trying it for yourself. It's surprising to me how little advertising there is. Woodford's the only commercials that I can think of. Maybe Jack Daniels, on like in sports and stuff, but like usually the only commercials I see for Woodford are during the Kentucky Derby, and then never again throughout the year. Which is funny. I mean, every once in a while you'll get Jack in like the NFL or
I was going to say the Super Bowl
like,
this year will be interesting if we're going to see any.
Yeah,
I bet it'll be heavy on ready to drink stuff.
Probably.
I bet that's where the majority of commercials you'll see for alcohol. Another question. So some of the places, Brown Foreman did have some of their tequilas up quite a bit. We do know that tequila has been a bigger seller. Actually, some of their rums were selling better as well, too. Do we think we'll get to a point with some of the big whiskey collectors start to collect some of these other spirits as well, just because they're going to be hard to find and highly rated? Do we think we'll have much crossover into that might pull some of their funds out of the whiskey collection market?
that was going to be my next question to the group was like, is this not necessarily that whiskey has peaked or that bourbon has peaked? Is this more like whiskey fatigue? In the same way that the Marvel movies are just no longer of interest to anyone because there's been 3 of them a year for 20 years. you know, um, and
We got
like,
Deadpool coming out. Everyone will go watch Deadpool, and then it'll be back to crap again.
but I mean, even like, myself, 3 of my whiskeys of the year were scotches. Because I'm looking at different things now. I've tried pretty much every bourbon that I care to try. Um, I mean, there's plenty of stuff still out there, but I know what I like now. So, the thrill of exploring isn't as enticing as it was, at the beginning of my whiskey journey.
Yeah, that's a good question because one of the things that also I wanted to talk about in this was I know I've cut back on purchasing quite a bit. Some of the people at work that were out hunting nonstop have also said I've got too much. I'm not. If someone calls me with something, I'm probably going to go, but I'm not going out store to store.
Mm-hmm.
So some of these people that do have larger collections, and mine's not crazy. I mean, it's decent, but it's not like a crazy collection. But even I've got to the point where I want to keep it manageable, where it's drinkable. Um, I've heard that from more people recently than I've heard in the past. Where in the past it was, get your hands on it, get your hands on it, and go. I think there's less and less. Well, but then I mean, you're also going to be replacing some of those people with people that are getting into whiskey now
Yeah, I was
too.
gonna say there's
So
still gonna be new
Mm-hmm.
people, especially there's it's a shocking amount of people that don't they know what whiskey is obviously, but they just don't drink it, and there's a whole untapped market of people that could get into the category if they had the right person, kind of guiding them and showing them, hey, you should try this and to kind of lead them down that path. So I don't know. I think I do believe we're kind of in the beginning, but I have noticed a lot of people in your guys' same situation where they're just like, I'm just done buying whiskey for a little while because I just have so much of it. People were going crazy the last couple of years and just building these massive collections, which is awesome. Because I think home entertainment is a huge thing that has boomed since COVID, and will
Mm-hmm.
continue to stay. People have realized like staying in and entertaining is just as fun, if not more fun, than going out to the bars and overpaying for less quality. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think we're just kind of in the cusp, and there's a lot of room for growth. But it's kind of hard to say, and it's much different than beer. People say, "Well, look at beer. Beer peaked, and now it's caving, and all these breweries are closing down." But I think it's a lot different than beer because beer you have to deal with the product going bad if it sits on shelves for too
Mm-hmm.
much, and you really need to get people to your tap room to buy the beer on draft and buy food, and that's where
Mm-hmm.
breweries make a lot of their money. Distilleries don't need you to
Yeah.
come to the distillery. They make their money by selling the bottles in stores, but especially now that they're building, like making it a destination to go to the distillery, I think that's only more room for even more growth.
Right. Yeah, I think it was either Whiskey Acres or it was when we were at Rush Creek talking to Todd about the craft industry isn't trying to outperform Brown Foreman or Buffalo Trace or Heaven Hill or whoever. Um, all they're trying to do is snatch that like 0.5% market share, in order to make their livelihoods worthwhile. Which in the case of Brown Foreman is a sizable amount of money in sales per year. But like I think probably, and I think we've discussed this before and made this point before, but I think that's where the trend is moving, is toward craft and local distilling and consumption. One, like you said, people want experiences. I think we talked about that in the in that one episode we did about experiences. I'm blanking on what the real topic was. We were talking about the Blue Run Distillery and how it's gonna be like this fancy ass thing, you know, and how it's no longer about like here's a barn where we have a pot still, come look at it, you know.
My grandfather's yeast from 1920, and
right, you got to bring people in. There has to be shit to do there. It's got to be interesting and exciting, and I think a lot of like craft distilleries bring that because there's like a community around it. You know, you go there with your buddies, you see the same people, you know, every month or every week, you know, hanging out there. And you know, community is a really powerful thing, especially in, you know, a consumer market. You build bonds around a product, you know, and you build brand loyalty really quick. So yeah, that's, I think, a direction that things are going, as well, and why we could be seeing some of these low percentage point drops in sales on some of these big distilleries. The other point I wanted to make was, I think because of podcasts like ours, I'm not going to give ourselves too much credit, but you know, there's a lot of others as well that are informing a lot of new whiskey drinkers on the pitfalls of, you know, beginning your collection and what you're drinking and things like that, where you don't have people chasing after a lot of the allocated stuff as much anymore, possibly.
No, you're still seeing that. It's
yeah, I was gonna say just today.
Well,
I
I mean,
5 people.
All right,
I'm wrong.
I was at one liquor store and there was like 6 people just waiting on the bourbon aisle, and the manager's like, it's Buffalo Trace Day, so they're just waiting.
Dude, like 5 people walked in today and just said, "Do you have anything allocated?" And it's like, yeah, go look at the shelf. Like half of the things out there are actually allocated. Like, what do you mean? I hate that word. I hate using it. Like,
you should just keep old granddad in the back
thing to bring up,
and bring old granddad out, and you'll sell so many bottles.
Honestly, we should have a section in the back of regular shelf turds, and when someone asks for something allocated, be like, "Let me go check the back," and go bring out an old granddad and be like, "Oh yeah, this is something you want. This is good. This is the allocated shit."
Yeah. I don't usually do this for people.
Yeah, right. You know, you seem like a good guy. Hopefully you continue to shop here.
And I'll sell you this old granddad for only $48.
Yeah. I won't give it to you for secondary. I'll give it to you for a retail price.
I'll meet you in the middle.
Oh man.
Yeah, I don't know for sure if we've peaked, but I do think the growth curve is going to slow down very rapidly. Like, I don't think we're going to continue the same growth curve that it's been on. I think it's going to start. I'm going to be a little bit different from you, Jake. I think it is going to start to. I don't think we're still in the beginning. I think we're closer to the pinnacle. I think we're about ready to plateau within the next couple of years. I think that growth curve is going to slow down quite a bit.
I think it really depends on the marketing that these distilleries do, and can we bring more new people into the category?
Here's what will be the deciding factor: is in a couple of years when Buffalo Trace's stuff is all starting to become available at all time. Like, because we've seen it with Heaven Hill bottled in bond. It's now sitting on shelves now that it's available at places.
Yeah, but Buffalo Trace is using the business model that Jake brought up in that one episode about artificial scarcity. They just come out with a new whiskey every time they have too much. Traveler.
That's true. Yeah.
every
Well, you got to
every
give
every
Chris
time they're
Stapleton
like
his whiskey.
every time they're like, oh shit, we have enough Buffalo Trace to sit on the shelf. Let's come out with a new label and just split it in two.
But like I'm talking about like all the other things, like people that are walking into your store, the Taylor, the Eagle, the Weller. I think they're gonna. I mean, if they're producing, well, we just did the math. Me and Rob did the math the other day with Heaven Hill's new production. That if they ran, let's just say they ran 50 weeks a year, which is still too much, they'd be producing over 660,000 barrels of whiskey a year.
Which is how many bottles, Dan?
Depends on loss.
What do you think those?
It's a
And
cop
a
out
5%
answer.
change in loss difference on 660,000 barrels could make a big difference in how many bottles that creates.
What do you think those people are gonna do that walk in stores and ask if there's anything allocated once all the Wellers and Taylors and Blantons are all sitting on the shelf?
I
they're
honestly think it's going to go away. I think the allocated things are going to start being like $300 to $500 bottles, and no one's going to be looking for that anymore.
I don't
know
think
if-
so
if
because a lot of
George T.
places aren't
Stagg
raising their
and-
prices.
Or it's gonna drop off. I think.
But like, I'm just curious in the beginning, like, are these people gonna fill up closets in their house of E.H. Taylor small batch and Blantons and Weller
No,
Special
no.
Reserve? Like, as soon as it,
The only
I don't
reason
know.
people do that is
In the
because it's
beginning?
hard to find.
Yeah, I know, but in the beginning, like, once it, like, okay, so right now we get 2 cases a month. That's our monthly allocation of Taylor Small Batch, Weller Reserve, Eagle Rare, and Blanton's. And Buffalo Trace, we get 5 cases. So once that gets up to, I don't know, 5 cases of each a month, we're still going to sell out right away. 10 cases a month,
Yeah,
we're still probably going to sell through it. Once that gets up to 20 cases a month, and we have enough where people, are starting to realize, like, all right, this isn't as hard to find as it used to be. I mean, I think, I don't know, like, there's going to be some people that are going to hoard this stuff and fill up closets and, like it's going away. Like, they just don't understand that eventually we're
they
going
don't
to hit a
understand that
point
once it starts becoming available that
that
at
there's
some
going to
point
be a
it'll
ton of it.
continually.
It'll.
Yeah.
I mean, because
It will, but
I did the same
we're at least
thing
5 years away.
when I first started. Oh yeah, I mean we're
We're
still
from
ways
that-
away.
years
that
away.
But
thing. Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, there was
But,
stuff
like,
that I
but these
saw
people
at
are-
liquor stores that I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to see this again. So I bought like 2 or 3 bottles. And now I just have them sitting under a sink in my basement because I'm like, this is everywhere. Like, I just was a dumbass and saw it in one store and thought it was like unfindable, And I think a lot of people are like that. And I think, it'll click for people eventually because at some point you'll walk into any liquor store anywhere in the country and be able to pick up Blanton's off the shelf. And when that's the case, no one's going to be going in demanding a case of Blanton's at a time. Unless you're like the guy who loves Blanton's so much that that's your like go-to daily drinker. Like that, at some point,
I mean,
it'll switch. It'll switch off, and then people are going to be stuck with closets full of Blantons and Taylor and be like, "Why did I do this?"
Yeah, they're gonna try and return it, and they're gonna be like, "Hell no!"
You can return it, but only if you swap it out for.
Not gonna let you return it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think the way we're trending right now, some of the stuff like BTAC and like the Old Fitz line and some of the other, like once a year.
I like how
releases.
hard you were trying to put a lot of Heaven Hill stuff into your statement
I
right
always
there.
have
Parker's
to put
Heritage,
Heaven Hill,
Yeah,
Parker's Heritage, Elijah Craig barrel proofs, the typical Heaven Hill limited releases. Like a lot of that stuff, I see becoming. By default, I think there will be more of it available. So my guess would be that it's still going to be in high demand. So I think the prices are just going to go up on all that stuff.
Yeah, but I don't know, man.
Instead
I
of
think
getting
Buffalo.
your George T. Stag for like $90 or whatever, it's going to be like 180.
Well,
And then I think people are going to start to turn off to that and be like, this isn't worth that amount, you know?
Weird. Like this year was actually the first year that we saw BTAC and the whole Van Winkle line increase in price a little bit. We used to sell BTAC for 120. Now we sell it for 150, 160 on some of them. They did actually go up in price a little bit this year, but none of the regular stuff. Like none, like Taylor, Eagle Rare, Special Reserve. So
I think
I mean,
they're playing the game to keep that stuff at the same price for as long as possible. Like the everyday stuff.
They know that they know, like they're the ones distilling the product. They know in 5 years they're gonna have X amount of all this stuff. In 10 years, they're gonna have surpluses of all this stuff. And if they raise the price right now, then it's only gonna sit on the shelves quicker.
Well,
So
by
they're
the time,
keeping their prices.
by the time
they're creating new
they're
labels
on the shelf all the time, that $45 bottle of Blanton's will be like one of the cheaper premium products available. I think that's the kind of game that they're trying to play. Is if they're able to keep that.
I think they'll keep their strategy of like these one-off things they're going to have sky-high prices on. But I think anything that's been an annual release they're gonna keep it around where it's been. I mean,
I think that right now is a short term. I think that's a short term strategy that they're playing. And these like one off.
What, keeping the prices is short term, or
no,
on the everyday stuff, or the one offs?
No, doing these like one-off releases, like that Prohibition series or whatever, and like
I don't know, man. They're gonna
super expensive Daniel Weller or whatever. And like this Chris Stapleton one now. Yeah, I think a lot of this stuff is like.
But the Chris Stapleton one's not expensive though, isn't it?
No, the Stapleton one is probably going to be one of their like everyday products.
They're gonna. But I don't know. I think they're gonna continue. But they're gonna continue to come out with new labels because. Just like that example you used, like why wouldn't they?
Well, I think
the moment Buffalo Trace
sales are going to increase no matter what.
Yeah, but the moment that stuff is on the shelf, they know people are not gonna buy it like they are right now.
Well, that's what I mean. I think right now they actually have a supply problem. Is they're not able to supply enough to meet the demand of the market. So in 5 years, they will. And if they keep their current lineup, they won't have to do all these like gimmicky releases to get people to pay an exorbitant amount of money for like a one-off Prohibition set or whatever. You know, it's basically just Buffalo Trace anyway. Like their sales will like quadruple just because there's 4 times more whiskey available in the market and people will still buy it.
If they come out with one more new label this year, I'm sold that they are playing the artificial scarcity game.
I don't know. I'm still against you, Jake. I don't think that they're. But even like the gimmicky Prohibition stuff, like I've never I know I've never tried it. I don't think you guys have either.
No,
but
you
some
can't
of that
find
stuff
it.
was super highly rated.
I don't even think it. Did they even release it yet? I don't.
Yeah, because it ended up being in a couple people's top picks this year or top barrels this year. I know it was on. I think it was in Whiskey Advocate and Minnick's list. One of the. So I wouldn't really call it gimmicky when it's winning awards or being highly touted. I think.
Well, I'm not saying it's gimmicky, and I'm not saying their bourbons are gimmicky.
Jake said it. Jake said it.
I'm just I just think they're playing it smart. They're playing it right, but if you're not catching on by now, like, come on, like they're literally just creating a new label every time they have enough bourbon to sell.
Well, I mean, that's like the thing.
You know how much money they make every day? People lined up at the distillery buying bottles. They don't want that to end.
But like, my point is that they could probably still make that. Like, they would still sell out even if they doubled what's available at the distillery every day.
Well, they would still sell
Like,
out even if they doubled their prices, but they're not doing
They're
that.
leaving money
Right.
on the table because they don't have the supply to back up the demand.
No, they're leaving money on
Eventually
the
they
table
will.
because they know they're gonna have the supply.
Right. They're playing a long game.
They could double their prices now, double their
Right.
profits,
Yeah.
and then in 5 years they're gonna be screwed because then nobody
Yeah.
is gonna want to pay for it, and they're not gonna reduce
Right,
their
exactly.
prices. So
We're saying the same thing.
no, I know I'm agreeing with you on most of it, but but yeah, they're. I mean, like, how cool would it be to go travel 5 years in the future and see where Buffalo Trace is at? Travel 10 years in the future. I mean,
And
15
buy
years
a
ago,
bunch of
Pappy
cases of
sat on the
Blanton's and then
shelf.
travel back in time.
I mean, sure, why not? But just to see like what people do, like, you know, like there's
Well, I mean,
the people.
yeah, it's
When we did that Taylor release where we said you had to admit that Wild Turkey 101 beat it, people were saying, yeah, I like Wild Turkey 101 better, but this is just so hard to find. Like, I love it so much. And it's like,
Love it so much.
yeah.
well, it's funny because we did these advent calendars in December, and Dan and I were doing the same one through some people at Whiskey Acres, and Dan organized the whole thing. So props to Dan.
Yeah, through me.
Just wait for me to give you the credit, all right? So every night me and Dan would text about whatever we were drinking, and there were like 5 or 6 different Buffalo Trace products. I think somewhere around
Sazerac. If you say Sazerac, that's
products.
right.
Yeah,
because Zachariah Harris is in there too.
yeah.
We had Weller 12, we had Buffalo Trace, we had Stag, we had Pappy.
Yeah, and me and Dan
Yeah,
opted to drink everything blind, and then we go check the spreadsheet. After we made our guesses, which I was almost always wrong. So I'll acknowledge that I never claimed to be good at blind tasting guessing.
but yet you're talking shit about your blend.
It's not blind. I tasted everything and blended it together. Anyway, let me make my point here. So there's 5 or 6 different Sazerac products that we drank throughout the course of this thing, and every single product I did not like. So I think I came to the conclusion...
You said you liked the Pappy.
Okay. It was Pappy 10, though. It's the best Pappy.
Yeah.
Not even.
But my conclusion at the end of that blind advent calendar was that I don't like Buffalo Trace's flavor profile. And now I'm like not as excited to go buy BTAC shit and like whatever else, because I'm like
I said,
now that I know,
I was mad.
It's like
obviously I knew it was all in it, and I was mad because I was hoping he wouldn't like the one pour, and I'd be like, "Oh, I know you have a Pappy 10. You didn't like that. I'll take that off your hands."
Yeah,
but he was pretty guarding of that. Weirdly enough.
Well, it was also the last day, and there's going to be something good poured on the last day. Am I right?
I wasn't expecting anything. I had no idea what was really in it. So.
There's a few people that knew it was in there because one of the owners put it in, but not many people knew.
The point of my long story that was interrupted by Dan multiple times is that, I spent a lot of time trying to find shit from Buffalo Trace, and like even when I was building my blends, one of the blends that did not make the cut was the Big 5 blend, where I just took 5 whiskeys from each of the Big 5. I ended up booting. I booted 4 Roses, I think, I booted Makers because I didn't want anything weeded in the blend. I used 4 Roses, Buffalo Trace, Heaven Hill, Jim Beam, and who am I missing?
Wild Turkey.
And I used a little bit of Eagle Rare. It was something like 10% was Eagle Rare, and the whole blend tasted like grape. I was like, this is fucking ridiculous. Like, how is that?
Sounds like someone was wanting to taste the Buffalo Trace in a blend that only had 10% of
No, it
something in it.
completely blew out the flavor profile of the whole blend. And that was another clue for me that I was like, I don't care for this as much as I thought I did. Now,
All right, well, if you want to sell some of that stuff, I'd be a buyer.
I get that people like it. It's I
Mr.
totally
CYPD.
understand. Yeah,
Delicious.
tater.
Delicious.
The amount of comments on that post with our reactions.
I know.
I don't give a shit.
That was
Delicious.
probably that was our most commented reel, and they were all calling you a tater.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. Don't care. Give zero shits what our listeners think. Mark it down.
Don't vote for
that's great,
Dan's
Dan.
blend. Don't
Yeah.
vote for Dan's blend. On
They're not going to
Saturday.
know it's blind, you idiot.
Well, this is coming out afterwards anyway, so
No.
We're gonna
you can't
slip
give
them a little
advice.
piece of paper and
Yeah.
tell them don't vote for this one.
What if mine is all just taters blended together?
That's what I tried to do, and it did not come out well.
Well, but you're not a tater.
I'm not a tater, but even I was hoping
I hope yours is all taters, Dan, because
it will be.
I want
That's
to
all he's
watch it
got.
fall flat.
That's all he's got in his house are tater bottles.
Dan's like, I don't care. I don't need to be a blender. I'll just put a bunch of tater shit in here and
No, Dan's
See what
gonna make like
happens.
a super wheat blend. It's just gonna be all wheated bourbons, and everyone's
Might be
gonna be
what I
like,
do.
"Oh, so smooth."
Might be what I do.
ooh, that's actually a good point. Wait, so we can't use 3 of the same label, right?
No,
So we can't have a Weller's blend.
no, yeah, you wouldn't be allowed to use 3 different Wellers.
Oh shit, you got to switch up your blend, Dan.
I know.
Yeah,
Shit.
he's in trouble now.
Start back from the drawing board.
All right.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Any
go
other
on,
thoughts
I'm
on
gonna
this?
go on the record. Well, I'm gonna go on the record on the podcast and just say I'm not a blender. I'm a taster, and I haven't started my blend yet. I'm just gonna throw some shit together tomorrow, and hopefully it'll
Hey,
work.
that's what I did last night. I did that last night. Took it into work today. Talked about it with a couple people, and I just got to fill a bottle up now.
Nice.
So that was my work.
All right. What I'm hearing is I've got this in the bag.
Dude, he's gonna be so mad when
What
he
I'm
loses.
what I'm
Can you
hearing
imagine this?
is you better have this in the bag. 'Cause
Like,
if you don't, we're all gonna call you out.
How many photos and posts has he done about trying to create the best blend?
He's-
And the
he's-
2 guys that threw shit together at the 11th hour.
He's been
Wipe
working
his-
on it for a few months, and he's been letting it marinate.
Oh my god.
He's got names
have.
for him. He named his
named
fucking
them.
blends.
I named them. I had to differentiate them somehow.
Like how? Like is that just gonna crush your spirits? Like knowing that you guessed single malt Scotch when it was a bourbon in the Advent calendar. Like if that doesn't hurt you enough, like now that you're gonna get your ass wiped by 2 people that didn't even try, it's
Scotch
gonna
was
be
on my mind.
hilarious.
I had been drinking scotch for like a month.
They taste. You know what? You're right. Bourbon and Scotch taste very similar. That's my fault for being. I'm in the
They
wrong.
do
on
when
that
they're
one.
like 90 proof sometimes.
Lots of excuses.
Again,
All right,
I never
so-
claimed to be good at blind tasting.
Yeah, so circle back.
I think that's tasting in general.
I think the next 5 years are going to be the most interesting we've ever seen in the whiskey industry. It's going to go one of 2
Yeah.
ways. It's going to truly boom through the roof, and we're going to see another level that we haven't seen yet, or we're going to kind of see things take a back seat. But I think because of how much distilleries are expanding, because of how many new distilleries we're seeing, and because we haven't even seen any marketing really at all to the masses with the whiskey and bourbon industry, that we have a lot of room for growth. And there's people like us who are at the point where they're not buying more bottles because they just have too much. But I think there's a lot of new people that are going to be getting into the category that will help push this boom to the next level.
Yeah, I think one
Jake.
thing that could be a big determining factor is how other spirit segments innovate in the next few years and adjust their strategies. Is like I think one of the big reasons why a possible reason why tequila seems to be growing so much is because there's a lot of emphasis on these like truly 100% agave, like more natural kind of expressions from distilleries that are certified and all kinds of things like that doesn't really exist in a lot of the other spirit markets. And as like I think millennials in particular are becoming more and more health conscious, especially around chemicals and additives and different things. That's I think a big reason why people might be gravitating towards tequila. So like if categories like rum or even if whiskey started embracing that more and using like, I don't know, it's not going to make a fucking difference, but organic grown corn and rye and barley and like that kind of shit, and you can slap a like fully organic label on it, that's just, that kind of stuff sells. So
My summary on today, none of that's going to happen because fingers crossed the sweet meteor of death wins the 2024 election and this is all just going to be over anyways.
you don't want to see Pappy on the shelf, Dan? Come on.
I think at this point, I think we can all think that the sweet meteor of death is a great write-in candidate.
You don't want to see Weller CYPB on the shelf?
I got a bottle of CYPB. I don't need it on the shelf. I got one here. And if the sweet
not-
meteor of death does come,
you
guess
can't-
what? If the
you
sweet
can't
meteor of
put that
death
in the
comes,
blend,
guess what I'm
right?
drinking? CYPB.
Yeah. You're
All right, gents. Well, next time we talk, we'll be going over Jake's crushing defeat in the blend off that we're having at Gold Eagle. I guess Jake. Well, by the time this airs, we'll have already had it. But
Yeah.
where can people find tickets to
It's
such
sold
fine
out.
events as that and other future things? I know with that or other future
Future-
things. Where can they find
Future
those?
events, goldeaglewine.com/events, or just go on our app and go to the events page. We've got a few cool ones still listed. We're doing a wine and cheese pairing where they're going to import family-owned cheese from like Sonoma shops and whatnot. And actually, it's not even posted yet. It will be soon. I know Jake's going to like this one, but we're doing a masterclass early March. That's going to be the launch of Hard Truth Bourbon. So they're finally going to have their
nice.
own bourbon, which I got to taste it the other day, and I was very impressed. And I should have been impressed before I tasted it, just because of how good their rye is. But like their bourbon was really good as well.
Sweet.
So I think that's gonna be really cool. We're gonna be some of the first people in the state to taste their bourbon. That's their own distillate. That'll be March 5th, I believe. Tickets are not up
Cool.
yet, but they will be soon. And yeah, so we got a lot of great events coming up. We're gonna schedule a lot more exciting ones for the year. But follow us on Instagram at Gold Eagle Wine. Follow us on Facebook at Gold Eagle Spirits. Wow, it's been a while since I've plugged. This is our first episode in like 3 weeks. And yeah, you'll see what we have, what we get, and all the cool events that we have going on.
I can't wait for the presentation of you giving me that bottle that I won for the Bears. Not
There's
being
not
as good
gonna
as the
be a
Packers.
presentation.
That's just exciting for me. We can do it in front of the whole master class tasting that we're having.
I'll just bag it and put it on the online order pickup shelf, so you can just grab it on your way out.
You can knight me with it.
You can grab it on the way out.
Jake, plug us.
Yeah, so next week we'll be releasing like probably a shorter, almost like clippy kind of episode of the results of the blend off, and maybe a little bit of our commentary on it. But we've The reason we're not going to do a full episode on that is because next week we have confirmed that we're going to have Raj Bhakta on.
Roger Goodell. Don't break the thing. It's Roger Goodell.
It's confirmed now, so I can actually put the names out. So Raj will be joining us. We're going to be talking about Bhakta Armagnac. We're going to be trying a couple of their Armagnacs. We're going to be trying their 1990 rum, which I'm excited about. And then their new 2013 rye, which I'm very excited about. So yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. Raj is a really cool guy. I saw him this year at the Gold Eagle Masterclass in the spring. Or sorry, no, it was last December.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost a year. It was over a year ago. He's really cool. Had awesome story about this Armagnac journey.
He's a very interesting,
excited about that.
Very interesting guy. He's got a lot to talk about. I anticipate that episode lasting a good while, and that's one that you're definitely going to want to tune in on as soon as it gets released.
Yeah, so be on the lookout for that.
And they're doing
be on the lookout for a blend-off recap.
They're doing a lot of things outside of Armagnac. We're going to do a masterclass with them this year where we're going to do everything but Armagnac. We're going to do bourbon, rye, rum, and just kind of all their one-off things that they're working on. So,
yeah, that'll be a cool one. So, yeah, tune in for that. You can watch us on Spotify and YouTube. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Perfect.
I had to cough. Sorry.
All right. Well,
find us on Instagram at Bourbon Matters and Facebook. We post all of our episode releases there and post clips. So check those out. Leave comments. Call Dan a Tater when he puts CYPB on his list of best whiskeys of the year. Me, the two Jakes get a big kick out of it. So,
and I don't give a shit about it. Don't care what any of y'all say. But no, I'll get to. It's been a while since I've seen you guys. I get to see you here in a couple days.
I'm gonna pull these clips of you disparaging our listeners and play them over the Gold Eagle loudspeakers at the event on Saturday.
You actually should
me.
Put some clips together. We can play it on the TV.
We could do that.
He doesn't want to do work.
I do all of the work for this podcast. Like quite literally.
True.
just as long as you're not doing the research, that's all we care about.
Yeah, I'll take that. That's fair. All right.
All right, gents. To a new year.
Cheers.
Cheers.